Have you heard of Rare Disease Day? Well, it is coming right around the corner. And as usual, we wanted to do something to celebrate Rare Disease Day and talk a little bit more about rare diseases, ultra rare diseases, and what it's like to navigate those difficult waters as you walk through many different types of challenges. My name is Jonathan James with Hope Charities, and it's a real joy to be able to come to you today to talk a little bit more about Rare Disease Day coming up on February 28th. And for this session, I wanted to take just some time to really talk to some people who have experienced rare bleeding disorders, which is something that is even more difficult sometimes because of lack of resources, lack of treatment options, and all kinds of difficulties that can occur as a result of that. And today, I've invited a great guest to join me on this podcast, Carly Magee. And Carly, it is great to see you. Thanks so much for joining me for the Hope Podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be able to talk to you. And I know that you and your family have been affected by rare and really ultra rare diseases in the bleeding disorder community. But for people who might just now be hearing your story for the first time, love to learn a little bit more about where you're from and how you're affected.
Hi, I am from the St. Louis area. I live in southern Illinois called Waterloo, Illinois. I am affected because I'm a mom of two amazing, wonderful adult children. I have a man. I have to get used to saying I have a man who's 27 and a lovely, lovely lady, 25 years old now.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I'm just now getting into the adult phase of raising children, and I have 4 kids, and my oldest just got married this past year. So, just I'm learning the ropes. So I need your wisdom on how to navigate these waters. But we're having fun so far. So that's amazing. I know one of the big things about having kids is it's a difficult road to embark on, no matter who you are or what season of life you're in. And but you had a unique set of challenges because you guys learned about bleeding disorder pretty early on with your first child. Is that right?
Yes. And I'll start off by saying I'm a little bit unique in the fact that my son, my oldest, was diagnosed very quickly right after birth. And
Wow.
that's very, very unusual for factor 10 deficiency. And so that's something that's a little bit different. But when he was 18 hours old, he was diagnosed correctly with severe factor 10 deficiency. But why that was he had a horrible birth. He had a horrible, horrible delivery of the doctor tried to use a vacuum extraction. He
Mm.
started having a bleed right away in between his scalp and his skull. And then after they realized he was in distress, they went ahead and did a quick C-section. And they knew already something was up, and they were asking us, and I was pretty much delirious right after trying to give birth and then having a C-section. They asked us all sorts of questions about bleeding disorders within our family, and we were totally, completely, obviously, completely blindsided by knowing anything about hemophilia, much less factor 10 deficiency.
Wow. And factor 10 deficiency is extremely rare. There's not a lot of cases out there. Is that right?
That is correct. And when my son was born, we were told at that time he was about 51 in the world. And then when my daughter was born, we were told she was about 74 in the world. Since then, we've gotten a lot more ability to look on the internet. Back then, we didn't even have an internet. And so we were able to really sort of find this more information out. And like I've actually been in contact with there about 110 maybe factor 10
Wow.
out there. I know we've really sort of tried to network between ourselves.
Yeah, that's amazing because it is one of the things that I think is the most important about living with any kind of rare disease is that you think getting to know other people's stories and hearing their experiences is so key to even your own success and progress as you try to manage the future. And I know that that's something that having 2 kids, was it a surprise with the second one to also have the same challenge, or did you have a little bit of heads up since you had one already?
Well, obviously, we had a heads up that we had learned as much as we possibly can. And I love telling this one story. Whenever my son was a little bit older, he very sadly had a brain bleed. And
Mm,
at that point, we realized we really need to learn as much as we possibly can. And
mm,
one nurse took us aside and said, "Hey, there's a library in the basement of this hospital. And you could have privileges to go down there and get some information." So we started like combing. And at that time, we didn't have the internet. We were just looking for any kind of information. So we started learning how to read doctors' journals. And
mm.
yes, that was very difficult. So kudos to all those doctors who were able to read those journals. However, we started learning as much as we possibly could. And yeah, we realized that we have a 75% chance of having fairly healthy children. And so we were sort of going into having a second child as we possibly have a 75%. But we also knew that she has a 25% chance. Actually, I was very, very fortunate of finding an OB that would accept a situation like what I was going into. And he promised me he would do a cesarean no matter what, because we could
Mm,
not find out if my daughter would have factor 10 deficiency or not. Amniocentesis might have caused a first bleed. So we didn't do anything like that. So we were just going faith that hopefully she doesn't have it, but she's going to get a C-section to keep trauma away from her. And
mm.
we had doctors on call as soon as she was born to possibly find out if she had a deficiency or not. And lo and behold, she was another 25%er that yes, she also had
Yeah.
factor 10 deficiency.
How did that make you feel as a caregiver and as a mom? I mean, you're already dealing with some of the challenges there with your son and all of the difficulty there, but how did you cope with that as learning about this with your daughter too?
Wow, I was devastated. That was a moment of true devastation because yeah, you know you're bringing this into the world and you chose to do so. And
Mhm.
then I know a lot of other moms out there have a lot of guilt and everything for carrying it and for bringing this on. However, my husband, for factor 10 deficiency, it's a recessive. Ooh, I can't remember it off the top of my head. We both have to have the gene,
Okay.
and so it didn't affect me directly as much as I know other people really have a heart problem, and I very understandably, but yet, so it didn't affect me so much like that. But yet it did affect me that like we chose. To bring a situation into the world like this, and so I just wanted to. It it almost inspired me to try a little harder to make all life uh, more exciting, more
Yeah.
get and, and
As
and
normal as
just
possible.
yes,
Yeah.
propel this life to be excited as best as possible. But just yeah,
So
exactly.
good.
Hmm.
Yeah, to me, the champions in this world are every mom that's been out there to really stand by their child's side, morning, noon, and night, throughout the journey of learning how to, navigate these extreme challenges. I think it's already a hard job to be a mom. I have 4 kids, as I mentioned earlier, but my wife is a superhero in my book. I couldn't imagine, having to navigate all of the things through pregnancy and all of the unknowns just in general. And then you pile on top of this really difficult disorder to manage. And, I think what a miracle that you guys had kind of a heads up and that you were able to get diagnosed. You had the doctors kind of already in place. And I know that one of the things that's really distinctly different, a lot of the people that follow this channel and listen to these podcasts are people that do have more common bleeding disorders, which is still pretty rare. I mean, you look at 30,000 roughly people that are affected by bleeding disorder, that's still only 10% of what it really needs to be in order to be classified as a rare disease in the United States. And so still very small. But when you talk about an ultra rare condition like this, there are 95% of rare diseases that have no treatment whatsoever. And the fact that there is a treatment for factor 10 deficiency is really wonderful. But if I'm not mistaken, there's very few options. Is that correct? It's just one or two choices that you could even potentially choose from.
That is correct. Um, we have a one product that is very optimal, I believe, because it's a straight 10,
Mhm.
and that one has not been on the market for terribly too long.
Wow.
But it's been such a blessing in our lives because it really has helped us be a lot safer. And yeah, before this product, we had complex, and I believe the only other products that are able to be used out there in other countries too, is a complex. And what happens because of that is sometimes you don't even know what the SA is, and so you might not even know how much 10 you're actually getting, and so you
Mm.
don't even know how high your activity level would be. But with this straight 10, then we're able to know exactly how much the factor 10 levels are and what their trough levels usually would get down to, and so keep them at a safe range. And also,
Yeah.
like if my kids are less than 1%, so they're super
Mm.
severe. And that way we know, they're higher than a threshold of like 5% of activity, or
Of
even
course.
it's much better to keep them at like a 15 or 15%, just to make sure that they're not having any spontaneous bleeds, because factor 10 is also known to have some spontaneous bleed and neurological bleeding.
Mm. It's amazing. One of the things I love to ask folks that are living with any kind of rare disease is what are some of the lessons that you feel like you've learned through this process of navigating life with a rare disorder?
Well, the first thing that jumps in my head is being proactive. What I mean by that is like carry my factor with me.
Mhm.
With me, I'm sitting there saying me, but it's my kids. But I've taught my
Yeah.
kids how to carry their factor with them wherever they go. And think about what activities you're going to be doing prior to which day, what day, when you're going to do it, and make sure that you go ahead and juice up before you go do this, or you just keep your days correctly. Make sure you prophylactically take your medicine. All those ideas, stay on top of it. Make sure you just and then advocate is huge
Mhm.
situation. Knowledge is power. I don't know how many times I've said that. Is just make sure you understand your disease, know it, know what your trough levels are, all those kinds of things that are really important to keep your life manageable.
That's so good. That's so good. I think anyone that's living with an invisible disorder or something that can't be seen right on the surface, and having to deal with all of the juggling, like you said, of being proactive and dealing with different kinds of medication that you have to keep in stock and on hand, and the pharmacy orders and all the things you have to deal with. It's just a whole lot of other stuff. And I think one of the things that's really that I found is that they say coal under pressure makes diamonds. And I think that's something, one of the things that we have an advantage in so many areas, that we have a sort of this extra weight that we have to deal with, but it oftentimes squeezes the best out of us. And it's
Mhm.
hard, but it really does produce something that is worth treasuring. And I know you feel that way about your kids for sure. And one of the things that I love to ask people, and I'll ask you now, is you know there's a lot of people out there in the world that don't understand what you deal with every day. But if there was one thing you could tell the world that you wish that they did understand, what would that be?
Mhm. Life is precious.
Hmm.
Um, that Yeah, just like you said, wow, that hits home. That just so hits home. That under
Mm.
pressure, we just learn to become our diamonds, and yeah, keep that close to your heart and just go run with it, and just know that you are a very each and every one of us is a very valuable person, and
Mm.
that we are able to overcome. And yeah, wow,
Yeah.
that was
I,
deep. I like, "Geez, Jonathan, you had me thinking for a minute there."
It's good. I mean, I think, we say this all the time. I know, you've been involved in the community for a long time. And I always say that the best thing is about getting a diagnosis with the rare disease is actually the community that comes along with it. We've really been
Mm,
spoiled in the bleeding disorders community because we have a depth of history of being connected. But I would encourage anyone from that might be listening to this right now, that might be involved in any community, if you haven't really connected with other people that are living with, whether it's a bleeding disorder or something else, there's over 7,000 rare diseases that have been identified. And, if there's one of those that you have, reach out. And social media today, and with all
mhm,
of the resources that we have, there's people are a lot closer to being connected than they used to be. And so there's a lot of downsides to sometimes the advancements of technology, but we're able to use it for some good things. And I think this is one of those moments. And so, Carly, thank you so much for your courage and for your superhero mom skills and for all the things that you do for your kids every day. I know they love you to death, and we do too. And we're so grateful for just your willingness to advocate and share your story. I think hopefully there's a lot of people out here that are listening to this. Who knows? We might actually discover some other moms and dads out there who are living with kids with Factor 10 deficiency that need to connect and reach out. So, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story and doing what you do. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's wonderful to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I am so excited about Rare Disease Day coming up right around the corner on February 28th. And so, if you have a chance, click the link in the website below and check out more about what we're doing for that. But I think that this is a wonderful time to also share this message with your friends and family to let them know what some of the struggles you are going through and what you've had to overcome. And just like Carly talked about, that diamond in the rough, those things that we treasure the most, sometimes are the things that we didn't even know that we needed to discover in ourselves. So thanks so much for joining me for this